282. We're recording this episode live on April 27th, 2023. And I'm your host, Nick Roome. I'm joined today by Heidi Mehrzad. Heidi, welcome back to the show.
Hello.
Hi, it's been a while since we had you on, and I'm excited to talk about some stuff with you, but we'll get to that in just a minute. On tonight's show, we'll be discussing some of the impact of road rage and driving and the implications for self-driving cars in the future. Later on, we'll be answering some questions from our community, including where can I find real projects to work on for free, explaining the job of a UX researcher to middle schooler, and feeling lost and needing guidance in human factors. But first, we got some programming notes here. Just a quick update. We're going to be off for the next 2 weeks for a summer hiatus. I am on a long-deserved vacation. We will have some other fun, interesting things coming out your way. We have an interview with Stephen Wilcox about one of the workshops from the Healthcare Symposium last month. And if everything goes to plan, we should have the first episode of Safe and Effective out for you all to listen to next week. Heidi, speaking of safe and effective, that is what the big announcement. That's you're here. So let's talk about it. Is it coming next week? We'll see. Maybe.
We're crossing our fingers. If all goes well, we'll record and we'll produce and we'll have an episode next week for you.
What can we expect in that first episode?
So in the first episode, we're gonna do an abbreviated episode, so to speak. We're going to focus on regulatory roundup. We are going to have a regular segment that's going to focus on regulatory for medical device development, medtech, meddev, bio combination products, right? The world of medical development. And within that world, we live very regulated, FDA, TUV, MDR. These are all terms that'll be obviously familiar to people in the industry. But those are the regulations and they bring out a lot of guidances. And we're going to talk about one that dropped in December. So we are going to talk a little bit about it.
Okay, so I have a question for you. And this is an honest question. I don't think we've actually ever talked about this. I am a human factors person. I am not a medical human factors person. Will I still get value out of listening to this show?
Well, yeah, 100%. You think I'm going to say no now?
It's all advertisement.
No, of course you're going to get value because it's going to be medical human factors. It's not always going to be medical device development human factors. It's going to be medical human factors. It's going to be human factors talking in the sense of application to medical, healthcare, anything and everything that has to do with that, right? It's not always going to be in specific to how to develop a medical device using human factors engineering, right? It's going to be the human factor science in the medical and healthcare space. So if you're interested in it, if you don't have any interest in that and you're not in our world, then value is going to be low, but it's going to be still educational.
Well, I'm actually really excited to listen to it from a listener perspective. It is the latest in the Human Factors Cast family of podcasts. We're super happy to have you with us. All right, so without further ado, let's get into our news story this week. That's right. This is the part of the show all about human factors news. Heidi, what's up with the story this week?
Am I reading the story?
Yep,
yes,
that's
I
you.
am. And it is me. All right. Well, this week is going to be about road rage. So, the University of Warwick has conducted the first systematic study to identify behaviors of aggressive driving and the impact it can have. The research showed that aggressive drivers tend to drive faster and also exhibit more mistakes than non-aggressive drivers. As the era of self-driving cars approaches, this poses a challenge for researchers. Aggressive driving can put the lives of other road users at risk. The research is significant because it could help autonomous vehicles identify and avoid potentially dangerous driving situations. The lead author of this study explained that the research would enable scientists to identify dangerous driving behaviors through the use of driver monitoring systems, allowing drivers to be alerted if they are at an increased risk of an accident, and for the vehicle to deploy calming methods such as altering the cabin noise level or playing relaxation music, or ultimately reducing the speed of the vehicle. The study shows that human error, often as a result of aggressive driving, remains the most significant causes of crashes on the road. The research aims to promote driving and to recognize the importance of driving privileges as a privilege and not an entitlement. So, Nick, what are your first thoughts?
So, I have two perspectives on this, and one is of somebody in an automated vehicle looking onto an aggressive driver, and that's the way that as I read this, I initially thought it was going. And so there's obviously there'd be some monitoring systems that would act very similarly, at least to how I interact on the road, which is avoiding aggressive drivers and getting out of the way when when they're being jerks on the road. Um, by the definition that they use in this article, I'm probably also an aggressive driver because it's saying that they
It's
average
very
about
loose.
five kilometers
It's
per
very
hour.
loose.
It just ends up being like 3 miles per hour faster than non-aggressive drivers, and so that's a pretty low threshold to be called an aggressive driver. I mean, there's also the other perspective though. So that was one perspective. The other perspective is being inside of a vehicle with semi-autonomous systems on board that can detect the driver's aggression, right? So I'm talking things like um, onboard systems like adaptive cruise control or lane monitoring or anything like that. And I think that would be probably a better use of some of this technology. And I think that's where they're actually leading us towards here, not necessarily the first scenario that I described. But Heidi, I'm interested. What is your take?
So curveball, um, as always, I almost feel like I have a complete different take on this. I actually have major issues with this. And from an aspect of, first of all, I don't, it's not even a personal like of the definitions in this article. I think the definitions of aggressive driving are, like you said, very low. um, when it looks at the bars, like 3 miles per hour going faster on average. I also think they're using the word incorrectly. I really do think, and they're using it wrong, incorrectly in the context. So when they speak about human error, often as a result of aggressive driving, that's actually completely false. It is a part of it, right? And there are so many other aspects that lead to human error. Way more important are distractions, mental health, behavioral things, habits, traffic flow, traffic influence, traffic speed, um, occurrences on the road, right? Events happening, like I said, distractions. And then there's also, we just went through a pandemic, mental health, heightened societal, cultural, impeding aggressions already coming in, right? Aggressive driving is a really big uh, bowl to throw everything in, and that's where, like, that was my initial thought.
I do want to touch on the definition, I guess, a little bit to start with, because you're right. The the definition that they use for aggressive drivers, well, it's a descriptive stat that they're saying they go 5 kilometers per hour mean faster than non-aggressive drivers. But I want to focus in on this aggressive driving definition because I think this really does define the behaviors. And I think this is a good one. I agree with you with some of the other definitions here, but I do want to just mention that aggressive driving to them is categorized by any driving behavior that intentionally endangers other psychologically, physically, or both. So anyone who's willing to basically put their life at risk, or other people's life at risk by like slamming on the brakes. See, I tend to think of it as like less of an aggressive driver and more of aggressive behaviors, because to categorize somebody as an aggressive driver, is it somebody who does X number of behaviors in a certain time period? Those definitions are lost on me, but there are certain things that you can definitely use to describe aggressive behaviors. And maybe we can focus more on that aspect of it than drivers, because everybody makes mistakes. And so if you think about like slamming on your brakes because of something, and it wasn't intended to hurt the people behind you, then is it aggressive? No, it's just dumb. And so so I'm looking at
Or
it, or a mistake. It could be a mistake. So I'm giving like those actions get the benefit of the doubt. Whereas if it was intentionally to get them to brake so that way it gets the person behind them to smash into them, that's an aggressive behavior. So I don't know. Where do
right.
you want to go with this?
Well, I mean, totally couldn't agree more. But I also, I in general really, I got really excited about the topic, and then I read the article, and I'm like, I have so many issues with this. I have so many issues with this because it says in the article, it speaks to, while it's of course unethical to let aggressive drivers out on the road and study them. I get it totally. I understand that they have to produce this, semi fake uh, behavior or thinking process in the participants. But they said that they put them in an aggressive state by recalling angry memories. That's not the definition of aggression. So I have so many issues with this study, and it's a very short, um, synopsis of what they're doing, and I'd love to read more in detail on it. Like maybe they are answering these things in bigger papers and bigger publications, right? But when I just look at it from that aspect, I have a lot of issues with their approach and with their definitions and how they see certain things. And like I said, defining human error often as a result out of aggression, totally incorrect. We come from the world of behavioral science, right? Human factors, psychology. Um, if there's any group on this planet who can understand the nuances, it's probably us, right? So for me, it's more about, if we want to leave it at that and just talk about the technology, then we could focus on the technology. I don't know if your thoughts are on that, like, because that's like another category for me in this, right? Like having things in your car detect your mood or your behavior and then influencing your driving or even interfering with your driving, right? Um, so that could be something we could focus on.
Yeah, and really that's where I imagined this discussion going, a
Yeah.
springboard. We could pick apart this article in a million different ways.
Oh, I
One
could.
one being that it wasn't actually written by the people who did the study, and so yes, we could dig into that. But I think there's a lot more of an
Yeah.
interesting discussion around the technology piece and how that interacts with human behavior, and
Yeah.
specifically around, well, what does it mean for a car to detect a string of aggressive behaviors? What is the threshold? Like, there's a bunch of different directions we can go. Like I was saying, from that first perspective of in cab monitoring systems to detect driver aggression, using things like natural language processing to find out words and phrases that might be considered aggressive, or
Oh,
um,
good lord. Can you
even
imagine?
even the kinematics of the steering wheel and the, I guess, the consistency of the controls. So there's a bunch of different ways in which you can identify that stuff. And then the intervention methodology, like what do you do once you've identified that the driver is aggressive? But then we could also talk about the other cars that are on the road monitoring
Right.
for situations like that. And I think it's a two-pronged approach. I think we do both. Where do you want to start?
Um, I like the interference because I don't know how you feel about that, but the instant I thought of having something in my car, first of all, monitoring my driving, no, no, thank you, sir. I do not need yet another thing that is monitoring me And I'm not even talking about big tech. I'm not talking about being government watching conspiracy theories here. I'm literally just, I don't need yet another tool in my car that gives me a dashboard that I have to divide my attention on, right? I just don't. When I think of interference, I think of neurodivergent people. I think of me. I have ADHD. Do not start playing music in my car without asking me. Do not start playing changing the light in my car without
That'd
asking
frustrate me
me.
even more, right?
I mean, now you're asking me to be aggressive. I mean, like ADHD has like, I can only obviously speak to things I know, but like has an aspect of rage issues, right?
Yes, I can speak to
There's
that. That's something that I've
there you
dealt
go.
with
There
a
you go.
lot in
We've
my
dealt
life.
with all our lives, right? As we get older, we learn, or you know, when once the diagnosis comes in and we understand where it's coming from, we can learn tools and you can start managing it. But road rage is actually something that ADHDers often suffer from, right? So now you're going to start messing with me, like because you don't like how I'm driving, and now you're going to edge me even further, and you're going to make me more and more and more annoyed and more irritated and more possibly aggressive. You're not fixing anything. Second of all, I don't know, does your car do the brake when you're too close to somebody?
No, I don't
Mine
have that kind
does.
of money.
Oh, you can get it for very cheap. Very cheap. Volkswagen, very cheap.
I don't
um,
have that kind of money.
mine mine does.
Patreon,
And
everybody.
throw us a couple of dollars so Nick can have that feature in his car. But mine does. And every time it does it, it scares the living out of me. It makes my heart race. It induces anxiety. It like gives me a teeny tiny heart attack. Um, and so uh, these monitoring systems and then interfering with your driving by cutting something off or inducing something or starting something, I would uh, that again to me is yet another example of how in society we want to develop a standard and then make everybody fit into that box. And that is where neurodivergent people are going to be left out again. People with disabilities, people with neurodivergent, right? We're going to be left out again. And we're going to have something where we yet have to conform to something yet again that we don't fit into, like the 9 to 5, right? This sitting in an office with lots of people, the big room offices. And it's just an example for me, but that's exactly that to me yet again. And so to me, there comes a point where with all this innovation, with all this technology, why are we keep developing things that are to be put in standard measures opposed to fixing things for people who don't fall in the standards, right? And that's where I really have issues with. Like, I don't have a problem with smaller things, but who knows? It's unique to me, right? Like, um, uh, Alexandra just mentioned lane detection, right? Like, I turned that off on my car. I'm like, lady, you need to stop telling me when I'm in the lane or outside of the lane. Like, I can't handle it. Like, um, but it speaks to a bigger thing. And then when I think of that technology, right? So the interference is a factor for me. And then the interference is also now when you think about like having a technology like that, you also have to think about um, mental state that the driver comes with, right? So how's the system going to know if maybe that day you are already in a heightened state, but you're doing the best you can, and it's like, or the traffic flows a little faster, so you are 3 miles over or 5 miles over, and you are changing lanes a lot because there is construction. Is it going to detect those things, right? Is it going to know that the reason why you keep changing lanes is because the traffic is directed that way,
Right.
or
What's the threshold?
what's the threshold? Again, thresholds are always, how are thresholds calculated? On a standard, on a average, right? On a mean. So again, it always leaves out the exceptions. And that is very, to me, is very, it's a very slippery slope. I don't,
Yeah.
and let me be very clear. If it's not going to be a topic we need to talk about, but let's be very clear. If this comes out, insurance companies are going to couple it to your insurance.
Oh yeah, they will.
And I don't need to be ducked on my insurance for having ADHD.
Well, I mean, they already have this for safe driving. So if you drive within the speed limits, or depending on how quickly and um, how fast you come off and on the pedal, right? Insurance companies have incentives for safe driving already, and you're right that
Right.
this would be included in it. And I just got to really quick. I just got to say, you both, even Alex in the chat, saying with the lane detection and the front forward detection. I got to get a new car. So support the show right there. The I mean, look, here's the thing. There's technology that can fix the issue, but there's also like
So,
policy that can change the issue too, right? So like if you think about aggressive driving, and if there's instances where we can make laws that, I don't know, would punish people for driving aggressively. So like a three strikes rule or something, where you
oh
could appeal them.
no.
Well, hold on. This is a controversial take, but like we already, so there, driving is a privilege, not a right here in the States. Okay. So the thing about that is that currently, what is the reevaluation period for a driver's license? I haven't had to go in and take a test since I was like 16 years old. The last time I did a test was for my motorcycle license, like 10 years ago. Okay. And so I haven't been tested. No one's checked me to make sure that I am still up to date with all the standards. I'm not saying that it wouldn't be a total pain in the ass to do so, but if it means that less people die on the road, isn't it worth it? Is it worth it?
Um, uh, Here's the thing. Um,
Are you
oh,
going to tell me that 20 minutes of your life to go get reevaluated is not worth saving a human life?
oh, reevaluate it. Sure, we can have that. I wanted to pick on the first thing you said, and that is
Okay.
policy. Um, and judicial systems. Let me be very clear. I don't want the topic to verge off of it, but I just like to mention it. Um, Women are losing their rights in this country as it is because of a judicial system that is based on very weird things. Let's just leave it at that. We don't have to get political. But I would not want the government to have yet another tool to oppress certain groups by taking away their rights to drive. Because when you take away the right to drive, and I call it a right to drive because I get it. I understand you want to talk about it being a privilege. But in this country, it's not a privilege, it's a necessity. If you don't have the ability to drive a car in this country, you most often cannot even have a job. This isn't Europe where you can take the bus or the train everywhere and it runs every 5 minutes in both directions. This is a
Right.
country where if you live where I live and work where I used to work, there's no connection. I couldn't have had the job I had. So if you are limited to having a job within a walking distance of your home, no, that's not
Yeah,
working in this country. So to call
you're
it a
right.
privilege in this country is a little bit unfair. Second of all, I get what you're saying with like the last time you took a test was 16 because it was one of the points I had in this thing, right? Is like um is is so here in this country you get your driver's license when you are a high schooler, right? Often combined with like a high school class to get your driver's license, right? Um, you take the test when you are 16, 17. Your mind thinks differently. Let me just be very clear. The things I learned when I was 16, if they were from a textbook, oh, good Lord, I've forgotten those. And another thing is, so, okay, let's say we get reevaluated. I actually would love that idea, right? But when I look at the ability of drivers in my vicinity, and I don't even have to say country because I can't say country because I can't speak for every state, but in my area, traffic circles is like, I mean, nobody understands them. Nobody.
When you say traffic circles, you mean roundabouts,
Roundabouts, whatever you want to call them, circle traffic circles, roundabouts.
despite them being magnitude safer.
Exactly. Nobody gets them. It's like a mystery. It's like everybody guesses, like, oh, do I get to go in now? Do I have the right of way that I'm in? Do I have the right of way coming in? Like, what is the situation here? And if that can leave a situation unanswered, I mean, nobody learns it because nobody has to. And that's to your point, because we never have to get reevaluated, right? So if you got your license before that was a thing, you never have to learn the rules of that again. So,
Exactly.
and I get it, but like it goes to so many things that I have real sincere issues with without being like pointing fingers at America's problem of driving education. Um, I noticed I always, this was one thing I wrote down in my notes. So again, I grew up in Europe. I got my license in Germany. There's real stringent rules on how you get your license there. And there it is a privilege, and it is a costly privilege, right? So we pay thousands and thousands and thousands for our driver's license. And you have to have a minimum of hours, and you have to have types of practice. You have to show highway roads and night driving and backing in and up the hill and parking and city driving and this and that. And so, and even if you don't have an automatic, no, it's the other way around. If you don't have a manual drive, you're still going to learn on a manual drive. Because if you learn on an automatic, that's written in your license. Like you're only allowed to drive automatic cars then. So like there's a lot of things that are differently when it comes to a driving culture, right?
Right.
And so when I think of that, what always fascinated me driving here, and still till this day fascinates me and induces a little road rage, might I add, is how on the interstate or highway interstate, why is it okay here to just block the left lane? Why is that okay here? Why is that okay here? And it has to do with this attitude of policing each other, of if I'm driving the speed limit, then I should be allowed to stay in this lane because I don't need to pull over. I'm going speed limit.
Well,
And if you're not
technically,
going speed
it
limit,
is the limit.
it
Like
doesn't
the limit
matter.
means that you don't go above that. It is the
doesn't
limit.
You can say it 4 more times. I don't care.
It's
It
the
doesn't
limit.
matter.
It's the
You're
limit.
not a police car. You do not get to police me. If I choose to drive faster and I want to flow with the traffic, then move over. You should not be blocking the left lane. And that induces rage behavior in people. So
Okay,
what we're doing.
but here's the thing, is it's the limit. They are within their
All right,
to stay in their lane because
are you being
they
serious right now?
Yes. They are going
No.
the maximum amount of speed that they can go
No.
on the highway because it says 65 miles per hour.
No.
Therefore, I'm not going to drive faster than that because it is against the limit. I don't
No.
understand why people think it's okay to go faster than the speed limit.
All right. First of all, you're getting a little ragey right now. Second of all, you need to come off of your high horse. It is not for you to make that rule. You do not police others. You are endangering others by doing that. And I'm saying endangering because when the traffic is flowing, You are holding up the traffic by doing that. And if your car says you're going 65, you might be going 63. Somebody else might be going 66. They're all not completely correctly showing the exact speed. So what you're causing is people to drive too close to each other, annoying each other, hitting their brakes intermittently, and you are just making the road unsafer.
Is
Here's the
that
deal.
is that
Move.
aggressive behavior because I am going the speed limit, though?
It is aggressive behavior to not move out of the way when you know well and good that you are holding up traffic. If you're driving speed limit, I don't care. You have to look at it from a point of view where you, Nick, are not alone on the road.
No, I
You
absolutely agree in defensive
you
driving. Yeah,
decide
no,
to
get out of the
drive
way, but
65. If the speed limit is 65, that's perfectly fine. I understand your point of view. What I'm saying is you cannot make you a singular control. You cannot police others. So the rule is, and it is actually, if you look it up, the rule is to move out of the way for faster traffic. It has nothing to do with speed limit. So you thinking because you're going speed limit, right? And that gives you the right to block the left lane forever, infinitely, is not okay.
no,
Because
I'm
you
just
don't
saying
know.
I don't get mad at people who drive the speed limit in the left lane. That's all I'm saying is I don't get mad at them. They're going the limit. And here's
I
the thing where
do
I agree
because
with you that it is dangerous because what happens is when you go the speed limit in the left lane, what happens is that people who are behind you start going and passing you on your right, which makes it an infinite cycle where you can't get out of that lane. I agree with you. I'm right there with you. I'm just saying the limit is the limit. You shouldn't go faster than the limit. I get in this fight all the time because why do you not go faster than the limit? Because you will get pulled over,
okay,
which
but you're
means you are
looking at it.
doing something that is
You
against
are
the law.
you are looking at it from such a privileged point. Oh my God, I cannot believe you have that viewpoint because there's other factors that come into driving, right? Have you ever seen trucks? Trucks don't drive speed limit. So let's be very clear. Trucks don't go speed limit. So when you're blocking the left lane because you're going speed limit and the speed limit is the law and you shouldn't go against the law and yada, 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 that truck does not care. And what they're going to do is they're going to push you and push you and push you and push you and push you. And there's a 16-footer behind you or freight truck, whatever it is. And you're in a little car. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. Let the faster traffic move past you and then go back in the left lane if you're so married to the left lane, right? But this ignorant thinking of that you get to police others endangers others, and that is actually, and that's where that's the why it, to me it applies to this topic. That's rage inducing. That's aggressive behavior inducing to other people. You're irritating people, and if somebody's having a bad day, now you're just asking for it. And that's what I mean. There's no groupthink anymore. There's no like think about your others anymore. There's no empathy for others anymore. There's no maybe somebody's having a shitty day.
Oh
Move
no,
over,
look,
right?
Heidi, I'm completely in agreement with you. I'm
No,
taking a contrarian opinion here. I think, look,
but it's more
there's
than that.
you're no, you're right.
It's
It's
more than that. It's not just the like driving in the left lane. It's also what
the
always
entitlement
fascinates.
on the road.
Right, the entitlement on the road,
Yes,
right?
no, I agree
And
with you. I
the
agree with you.
shoulder. How many times do you see somebody using their blinker when they change lanes on the
And then forget
highway?
about it.
Forget about it. First of all, using it, I barely ever see it. Again, well, should add, I live in Massachusetts, so driving over here is different. But also, has everybody forgotten that they're supposed to look over their shoulder when they change lanes? Because I mean, I can't tell anymore because all I ever see is people go, shit, no
Yep.
blinker, no nothing, shit. Like, oh, I'm alone on the road. So that all these things are factors for me where I'm wondering, would the system, that monitoring system, right? Would it take certain things into account? Is it going to penalize me for subverting a dangerous situation
Right.
because it thinks I'm being aggressive, but really I'm being abrupt because somebody else is being like, how does that work? So I don't know.
And here's where I'm at with the whole thing, because I think we both agree that the right solution isn't necessarily interfering with somebody's driving, because for one reason or another, it can either enrage you even further. It can cause you to take even more erratic action. There are certain things that you can do from a policy perspective, like implementing some regular recurring evaluations that would help and assist with this type of thing. And in case anyone is interested in that larger conversation about inequality, marginalization, and what the US has done to sprawling communities and speed limits and all that stuff, as heated as I got on the 65 mile per hour speed limit thing, there's some we had a discussion on the show. It was I'll actually bring this up, episode 212, where we talk about speed affecting transportation planning, and we talked a lot about the sprawl of communities and how it's really unequal because you need to get from one place to another. That being said, that discussion lives there. For this, there's policy, there's technology intervention, but I think we're both in agreement that it doesn't belong in the aggressive car. I'm arguing that it belongs in every other car on the road that can alert their drivers to erratic behavior happening. So if you have some sort of
Yes.
onboard system that says, hey, look out for this a-hole over here because he's going 65 miles per hour in the left-hand lane, that would be a more effective system and a more effective solution for still cars still piloted by humans, right? Where the
And
autonomous vehicles could make their own actions, but for systems where humans are still the driver, that might be the happy medium there.
if it really would say look for the a-hole, I would buy the software.
Yeah.
I would totally. Oh, I'd be in. Yeah. Yeah.
I'd
If
buy
it would
it.
say look out, there's another a-hole or another mass hole. Yeah. Yeah, I would totally be in. But I actually agree 100% with that one because I think, yeah, if it wants to alert me, like um, Waze, right? That's what it's called. Waze has
Yeah.
these little like pop-ups. Like if it, oh my God, wouldn't it be so funny if it had like a little emoji, a little brown emoji, like,
If you could
and
tag cars that, like, say this is an a-hole, if it gets enough reports, it elevates it, and that'd be cool.
yeah, that would be, well, I don't know. That's going into the realm of bullying again. But
Well, it's
yeah, I think
aggregated data, so you'd need a certain amount of agreement among other drivers around you before it would flag you,
right. But let
right?
me let me just be clear, the Swifties are like they can do anything, right? They can hack any system. And
True.
so but like I I would be, yeah, I would be more interested in something that would be more like a detection kind of software. I think it's very dangerous to interfere with um, human machines. And I mean, we could take this way further, but I think we're going to leave it at that. But I'm just going to hint towards like um, some of the most, horrific accidents with human error, when you think about it, because they rely on automated systems and because they have handed it off to humans and humans rely on interfaces. And then these interfaces detect something wrong or don't, or some, there's a glitch, reasons model, one event leads to event, leads to event, leads to catastrophe, right? So that would be very very troublesome to have something there that automates something that shouldn't be automated. And I mean, that goes into the world of AI. I mean, we can take this so much further, right? Like there needs to be some kind of, I personally think is there's a lot of talks out there, and I think they're very fascinating when people talk about how technology is great until it isn't, and there needs to be a threshold, and we need to be more cognizant of putting thresholds in that stop us from moving towards a certain point because we're losing control of what makes us humans, what makes humanity human, right? If we're going to hand everything over, um, and so I don't feel comfortable with something yet another thing interfering with me when I'm already getting mini heart attacks from my braking system.
I feel you there. Heidi, any other closing thoughts? Get out of the left lane.
I'd love to have a neon. I have debated buying a neon sign that blinks up and says, "Get out of the way." But on that thought, no. Any other thoughts? Yeah, maybe we should all donate a couple of bucks so Nick can have a better car.
Just so I can drive 65 in the left lane. No, I think this is a multifaceted issue, and it's really interesting how all of it ties together, especially with aggression and automated vehicles. And as we move closer to full autonomy, we're not going to reach that point on the road for a very long time. And so needing to develop systems that understand human intention and understand conditions on the road, that interpret it and can relay that information to other drivers, I think is probably the most important aspect of this. And I'm glad we really focused the conversation more on, towards the end there at least, on the solutions within the other cars, because the solutions within a cab to alter your driving behaviors, not going to fly well, could actually end up making more of a mess. All right. Well, thank you to our patrons and everyone for selecting our topic this week. And thank you to our friends over at the University of Warwick for our news story. If you want to follow along, we do post the links to all the original articles and our weekly roundups in our blog. You can also join us on our Discord for more discussion on these stories and much more. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back to see what's going on in the human factors community right after this.
Are you tired of boring lectures and textbooks on human factors and UX? Well, grab your headphones and get ready for a wild ride with the Human Factors Minute podcast. Each minute is like a mini crash course packed with valuable insights and information on various organizations, conferences, usability methods, theories, models, certifications, tools, and much more. We'll take you on a journey through the fascinating world of human factors, from the ancient history to the latest trends and developments. Listen in as we explore the field and discover new ways to enhance the user experience. From the Think Aloud protocol to the critical incident technique, focus groups, iterative design, we'll make sure that you're the smartest person in the room. Tune in on the 10th, the 20th, and the last day of every month for a new and interesting tidbit related to human factors. Don't miss out on the Human Factors Minute podcast, your ultimate source for all things human factors.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our monthly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and access to the full library of Human Factors Minute, a weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you, and remember, it depends.
Yes, speaking of Patreon, we always want to thank our patrons and especially want to thank our Human Factors Cast All Access and VIP patrons like Michelle Tripp. They truly keep the show and our lab running, which, by the way, if you are unfamiliar, we have a lab. Are you tired of being a boring human who doesn't understand human factors? Then you need to check out the Human Factors Cast Digital Media Lab. Haha, that's right. Our lab focuses on communicating human factors in an exciting way that'll make your head spin. But wait, there's more. You can get more work experience while having a blast with our exciting projects. Woohoo! Our lab... ads are so dumb. Our lab offers deep dives, content creation, and learning opportunities that'll blow your mind. And that's not all, folks. You can even work with industry tools that'll make you feel like a pro. So what are you waiting for? Join us at the HFC, Human Factors Cast, for anyone uninitiated, Digital Media Lab, and become the coolest human on the planet. Just kidding. But seriously, though, join us. All right. With that dumb ad read out of the way, let's get into the next part of the show.
Maybe you should.
It came from
That's right. It's time for It Came From. This is the part of the show where we search all over the internet to bring you topics the community is talking about. If you find any of these answers useful, give us a like wherever you're watching or listening to help other people find this content. All right, we have 3 up tonight. This one is by Cigixx on the user experience subreddit. They write, "Where can I find a real project to work for free?" They write, "Where can I find a no-cost UX, UI, or human factors design projects to build my portfolio? I'm wondering if there's a website or place where I can find actual design projects for free, like for charities or startups or human factors cast labs that need a website or app. I want to showcase my skills by working on real client projects, even if I won't get paid for now. Can you help me find some options?" Heidi, what do you think?
Your voices are hilarious tonight.
I'm on one.
Um,
This is
you're
this is
on
the
a
man about to
roll.
go on vacation. This is
You're on a roll there. Little ragey, little voicey. Oh, it's a treat tonight with Nick. Um, I actually, that's why I said earlier before we went live, I was like, this is all you because I have worked in nothing but regulated industries. There are no free projects. I mean, there's poorly paid projects. I mean, if you want to get, very little, if they is free for you, then I would consider government contracts. I know that the VA always looks for volunteers on their UIs. I know that there's plenty of government contracts out there, or government contracts, government work, where they have very little funding, so they are, help. They're happy with everybody who can help out, but it free per se, where you can practice. You're To me, this is like two things, right? You're looking for practice work, and because you're practicing, you are willing to do it for free, but nobody really wants your practice work. So I would consider like that a little, like, depending on what you're trying to practice, then you could maybe offer some freelance work for companies, startups, right? Something like that, where it's not that high risk, high, value kind of thing. I know startups always are helpful, are happy for any helpful person or helping hand. So that's the couple of things that I would think of.
Yeah. Hey, we have a lab. So I don't know, maybe the lab, but also the lab. And have you heard we have a lab? I think there's
Say it again. Say it again.
the lab. No, so look, there's a couple options for you. There's plenty of websites that connect you with volunteer organizations out there that will sort of list a task. And here's the thing with volunteer work is that both parties understand that it's volunteer work. And so that motivation needs to be intrinsic in the sense that the person who is the volunteer, i.e., you in this scenario, you need to have an intrinsic motivation to complete the project because the expectation for the person that you're volunteering for is that they're not going to get it done because it's a volunteer position. And like if anyone volunteers with the lab, my expectation is that you get nothing done. And that's an okay and reasonable expectation to have. That work needs to come from you. And that's part of the reason why you don't see a whole lot of these opportunities where people go, "Hey, I need volunteers to do this big, massive project," because either people are going to burn out in the middle of it, realize they're not getting paid for work that they should get paid for, or decide that they have enough to fit into a portfolio and call it done. And so that's why you don't see a whole lot of these opportunities just screaming out there to do work. But I would say, even beyond our lab, there are other labs out there, local local organizations, charities, all this stuff, where it helps a lot if before even engaging to them, you come to them with something and say, "Hey, look, I've done some work. I'd love to work with you, just pro bono to get this thing even a little bit further than where it is right now. I just wanted to come to you with something so you know that I'm serious about this," and that would go a long way.
And that's why I mentioned like helping startup companies or helping government agencies who don't have a lot of funding, where maybe you work for very little with the understanding of how that works, right? value, that whole
Hmm.
paying for something qualitative and paying very low for, so I would start there. Like, this person doesn't speak to exactly what type of work, like UX, UI design projects could mean a lot of things. But like,
Yeah.
I know that every city in this country would love for somebody to come and revamp their website.
Yep.
Um,
Plenty of opportunities there.
plenty of opportunities there. I can just think of my city's website, and
Yeah.
or charities always are thankful for any kind of input you could give. Although I have to say, it's going to be, oh God, I hope it's not controversial, but charities have nicer websites than government agencies. So I don't know. There.
All right, let's get into this next one here. This one is by Specialist Admirable One on the UX Research subreddit. They write, explaining UX research job to middle school kids. The question is, how can I explain UX research, and by extension human factors, in simple terms to middle school students? I think this is a good exercise for all of us to do. Heidi, what are your thoughts here?
I'm going to plug, I'm sure she's going to be happy about it, but I'm going to just plug the book that Pamela wrote. She wrote books for U is for UX, and H is for human factors. And I would start there, because this is what I'm guessing you're looking exactly for. Simple terms, explaining what we do. And it's very interesting. I always absolutely love these. And I think, quite frankly, adults should read them too.
I think so too.
Because
They're great books.
Because I don't know how many more times I can handle. So what it is that you do again? Can you tell me again what it is exactly that you do? Or what is human factors again? Can you remind me? No, I don't need to remind you. You just have never remembered in the first place. So
Right.
those books are really great.
Yeah, those books are good. If you're talking to a younger audience, or even stakeholders that don't quite understand what you do, you can start with an analogy. I like to use the one of, kind of how a chef tastes their food before they give it to somebody else to make sure that it tastes good for the customers that are paying for it. Well, we test products and services and websites and applications to make sure that they're easy to use for people, and that they make people happy. Right. And so, like, again, very simple terms, right? And the other thing that you might want to communicate is that it's all about understanding people, what they want, what they need, how they behave, what they believe, to make things work better for them. And I think just keeping it very simple, designing for the user plus the context, again, like, just that's kind of the motto, right? Design for the user plus the context that they're in. You have to explain what context is to a middle schooler probably, but I think that's the way to go. Simple terms. You're right, though. Those books are great.
Well, if we're gonna go analogy, let me just add. So that's funny that you brought up the soup thing. So that's actually how we in medical human factors often, I shouldn't say we, but I've seen this example so many times. The difference between formative and summative testing. And just simple terms here, formative is as you're forming the product, right? And summative is as you're validating the product, right? So there's formative testing, usability testing, and summative usability testing. And they explain formative testing as when the chef tastes the soup, and summative testing when the guest tastes the soup.
Perfect.
So it's perfect, right? But as far as analogies go, before these books came along, or I knew of them, I used to explain it this way. I ensure that you can use a product without having to read a 500-page manual. And that means that I lean on the things that we intuitively already culturally do. And that is, for instance, when you walk into a room, do you flip the switch up or down? right? When you use your blinker, do you go up to go left or do you go up to go right? Green means go, red means stop, yellow means warning, period, waiting period. Like these are the principles that we apply in human factors design or UX design. We lean on things that are already commonly known or intuitively to our nature or from cultural standards. So that is kind of, the fact that, I don't know, that we still have to put on doors, press or pull, because everybody has like a weird thing where, I expect a door to be pulled open, and then other people go, no, I expect that to be pressed in. So.
And then when it's mislabeled, you get rage like Nick when he's talking about in the left-hand lane and people going faster than 65 miles per hour. All right, let's get into this next one, this last one here by Commercial Street 86 on the Human Factors subreddit. They say, lost, need guidance. As someone who studied human factors, I'm confused about their practical applications of my knowledge in real-world scenarios. What are the actual responsibilities and duties of a human factors person in an organization? Are we only supposed to gather, collect, and disseminate data, or should we provide technical knowledge to stakeholders? I'm unsure about the role of any human factors person and would love some guidance. Heidi, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. Uh, 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 Pause. There's so many thoughts that I have. Like, yeah, when it comes to your roles and responsibilities, I think first of all, it's dependent on what industry you work in. Second of all, what organization you work in. I think your job description should have your roles and responsibilities in there. As far as real world applications, I mean, I always joke because I say that every human factors engineer on every development team always acts as the team mediator, the team counselor, the team communicator. Like this is, we have to make the emails palatable to everybody. We have to explain the emails to the other people. We have to explain this to the other people. When I say other people, I mean engineers. And so there's lots of different roles and responsibilities and like real world scenarios, but I always equate it to the fact though that you do come with a different background, right? So you on average, or try not to use the word standard here, but on average should have a greater talent at communication because you understand the psychology a little bit more and the human behavior a little bit more, right? So it is very often the fact that you do have to evangelize, you do have to educate, you do have to allow people to understand what you're seeing and why you're seeing it and why it's valid. Granted, this obviously speaks to exclusions of situations where you're doing it over and over again because people are not being mindful. But I'm just saying, like from a get-go instant, from an initial perspective. So there's a lot of that. As far as I don't know if it was like real world scenarios as in like what kind of industries applications, there's aviation, there's transportation, there's medical device development, there's healthcare, there's hospitals now hire human factors people to select the equipment or the software or the newest devices because they want to make sure that their staff can understand it according to their rules, according to their organizational structure and their needs. So there's a lot of areas now where human factors people sit in various different roles.
Yeah, we do everything. And I say that like partially joking, but also partially not. I mentioned this like many times on the show. We're jack of all, master of none, but often better a master of one. So like I think the thing here is that we do everything and it will largely depend on your background and your comfort level with it. But as Barry would say, he would say something like we're the glue that holds all the pieces together, where
Oh yeah.
we're kind of the mediator between all the different groups, but ultimately as advocates for the user. And so are we only supposed to gather and collect and disseminate data? Yes, but should we also provide technical knowledge to stakeholders? Also yes. And a bunch of other responsibilities along those lines as well. I think ultimately it will depend on the organization that you're in, the structure of the teams, but you're going to be playing more of a role in most cases than just those two things because of that evangelist perspective that Heidi was mentioning. So I don't know, food for thought. All right, let's get into this last part of the show. It's just called One More Thing. All right, Heidi, what's your one more thing?
Can you go first?
I can go first, but I usually have the guest go first. So
I know. I'm just teasing. I don't really have a one more thing. I think my biggest thing this week was all professionally related and confidential. And but one of the big things that bugged me this week again is please don't come for me, but Microsoft Teams, I swear to God. When are they ever going to get rid of some of their bugs? That would be one. The other one, super, super minor. I saw yours, Nick, and I thought of, well, the end of Ted Lasso is near. I'm very, very
yeah.
sad.
How is that? I haven't watched any of that yet.
Oh my God. How can you ask me such a question? How is that?
Describe it in one word.
One word.
Yeah.
Amazeballs.
Okay. It's good enough for me.
Is that good?
Yeah,
Fan freaking tastic.
That's a good one too. Oh man, for me, there's
It's
a lot.
love. It's kind. No, it's kindness. Kindness. It's a show that is all about positivity, and there's no moment where your heart isn't swelling with, oh, I wish every human was like that. Like, why aren't we treating each other like that? It's just so, such a feel-good show, and
It's
it's
like a
gonna be
warm
so
cookie
sad.
show.
Oh, it's a warm cookie show, but it's not fake. Like, it's not like corny warm cookie. It's real. It's really real, but it deals with it in a positive, warm way. Kind way. Kind. I would say kind. Kindness. Yeah.
I like it. For me, there's a bunch of things that I could talk about. I got video games coming out tonight. I'm going on vacation. I talked about some of these in the pre-show. I could do a Love is Blind update, but Barry's not here, and I want to know his thoughts on it. So what I'm going to talk about today is another piece of media called The Jury. I think it's called The Jury. Oh, geez. I hope it's called The Jury. It's this new
What?
it's this new show where basically there's this one guy who is not in on it's like the Joe Schmo show from back in the early 2000s where everybody's in on this. It feels a lot like the Truman Show in that regard, where there's this one guy. It's a documentary crew. It's by the guys that did The Office, and it's following this guy who's going through a mock jury, a mock jury duty. It's jury duty. That's what it is. And everybody on the jury is actors. All the defendant and the plaintiff and the judge are all actors. They're all acting out these like fantastical scenes in some ways where, but it's all played off completely legitimate. And it's hilarious because this guy has no idea that he's the center of everything that's going on. They're all improv actors. They're all playing out this scene. They sequestered the jury, so they're all in like a hotel and everything. It's just a really interesting and logistically complicated piece of media to put together, and I just really appreciate it for that. Like, it's funny too. So I don't know if you're interested in like the Truman Show type of thing, go check out Jury Duty. It's pretty great. All right. And with that, that's it for today, everyone. If you like this episode and enjoy some of the discussion about, I don't know, cars and alerts and everything, there's an episode that we did, a new way to alert drivers to pedestrians, that has a lot of the similar themes that we were talking about in this show. Comment wherever you're listening with what you think of the story this week. For more in-depth discussion, you can always join us on our Discord community. Visit our official news website, sign up for our newsletter, stay up to date with all the latest Human Factors news. If you like what you're doing, you want to support the show, there's a couple things that you can do. One, you can stop what you're doing, leave us a 5-star review wherever you're at. That will help us. If you have friends and want to tell them about us, then you can do that too. And if you want to buy me a new car, you can always support us on Patreon. If you have the financial means to do so, just $1 gets you in the door, and tons of stuff coming your way for that $1 donation. As always, links to all of our socials and our website are in the description of this episode. Heidi Mehrzad, where can our listeners go and find you if they want to talk about driving 65 miles per hour in the left lane?
And as always, please don't. Please don't. But you can find me on LinkedIn and on Twitter, on Insta, all under at HFUXResearch. On LinkedIn, you can find me under my name as well. And yeah.
And coming soon, Safe and Effective, right?
Yes, we will have that one too. It's Safe and Effective _ I believe, on Twitter. And I'm going to get it right for next time for the Insta.
As for me, I've been your host, Nick Roome. You can find me on Discord and across social media at Nick_Roome. Thanks again for tuning into Human Factors Cast. Until next time,
It depends.
it depends. Awesome show. That was fun.